This time last year, Lockie Neal spoke to the media before you guys went on holiday, and a month later he was gone. You don't have anything to tell us?
No, I'm not leaving, mate. I'm in for the long haul.
100% committed to the club, no matter who's appointed coach from here?
Absolutely.
It's obviously a year that's going to be remembered mostly for last week, I guess, but from an overall point of view, how do you rate the season?
Yeah, I mean, the dust hasn't quite settled yet, so in the next couple of weeks I'll get a good chance to look at the year as a whole. I think the promising sign is that we beat some good sides when they were playing their best footy. Giants away, Collingwood away, Geelong back at home. So going into next season, we're not daunted about taking on the best teams in the competition. What we do need to work on is ironing out our inconsistencies and finding ways to win multiple games in a row.
This season there's only been really 3 blowouts. Really last season it was 9. How significant is that, just showing the progress?
I think that's significant. I think our average losing margin was tightened right up. As you mentioned, there's only 3 games that we probably have a major blotch against our name, and that shows the depth and improvement in our group.
How much did injuries play a part?
I think that was significant. We fell off the cliff again, which I think is the 3rd or 4th time in a row that's happened to our club in the last couple of years. We addressed it midway through the season, but at the end of the day, if you don't have some of your key players on the field, it makes it difficult.
Does that make it frustrating for yourself when you have to push forward when you're forced to, just because there are so many guys out, especially in the forward line?
Not frustrating from that point of view. More frustrating that we work so hard for so long. Our biggest resource and asset is players being able to play, and if that is unavailable, then you have to really go to plan B, C and D, and you're playing catch up from there.
Just on the players that are available, there's been a lot of talk about some key players potentially moving east. Now that there's no CEO, no coach currently appointed, how much of a role do you play in, maybe even having a quiet word to these guys because they are your mates?
Yeah, it's a good question. As much of a role as I can, that's appropriate. I'm not going to be getting down on my knees and pleading with anyone to stay. They've got to make up their own mind, and really at this club we want people at all levels who really want to commit to the cause and help Fremantle get to where it wants to go. The players, Brad Hill, Ed Langdon, who have been talked about potentially leaving, they have played enough footy and deserve the right, I think, to be able to choose where they play their footy. We're hopeful it's here with us at Fremantle, but their decision will be up to them and their families.
How much of those guys and the senior guys are part of... Al Alcock spoke about this club becoming the juggernaut, the powerhouse of the AFL. How much is retaining those sort of guys important to becoming Fremantle's full potential?
You never want good players to leave, but us becoming a juggernaut, or whatever you want to call it, won't be dependent on 1 or 2 players or even a senior coach. It's really the collective of the entire playing group, coaches, administration, on and off field. So yes, we want to keep good people at our club, we want to attract new people to our club, but it won't be dependent on 1 or 2 people.
There was a letter in the paper today from a fan questioning your on-field leadership traits and saying that you don't show enough on the ground as much as other captains. What do you think when criticism is levelled at you like that?
So where did you say the criticism came from?
In the paper from a fan today, questioning that your on-field leadership isn't as evident on ground to some of the younger players as other captains.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's hard to answer that question because there's no context. You don't know whether they're a Fremantle fan, whether they go to every game. It's very easy to sit courtside and throw a few grenades in, and it's probably inappropriate to comment on a fan's perspective that's written up in the paper.
What are you looking for in a senior coach?
A number of different things. Want someone that's well equipped with modern day footy, potentially a bit of experience at coaching level, someone who's got a good handle on personal relationships and being able to build a good culture with team sport. We have so many people on our list. You've got to get everyone on the same page. And someone who likes winning and is pretty keen to take this club to places it hasn't been to before.
What was your relationship like with Peter Sumich when he was at the club?
Good.
Would he be one that you'd consider or like to see possibly in the race at least?
I'm not choosing the senior coach. That's up to a panel of internal and external people. It's not me.
You guys have had a fair rebuild now, that 4 years. When do you think success will come to the club? How close do you think you are?
when do I predict success will come to the club?
Like in terms of even finals potentially and things like
Yeah, 24 hours after finishing season 2019 and not having a CEO or senior coach, it's pretty hard to predict when I think we'll be winning a grand final. Optimistically, I'll say next year, but without all of the cards on the table, it's hard even to have an estimate. I think we're a better footy team this year than we were 12 months ago. It's undeniable, and if we can get our key people on field for longer periods of time, we'll take a step forward again next year, regardless of who's driving the bus at senior coach level.
Now, what's your message to the playing group for the off season now? Dale said yesterday that some players are going to have to go and have a think about what they want to be at this club. What's your message to the playing group with the time off they've got now to reflect on the season and where they want to go with their football here next year?
Yeah, most players are really driven individuals. That's why they're at this level. The more senior players who have been around a number of years, they know what's required of them in the off-season. But our younger players need to work out what sort of player they want to be next year. And the off-season and pre-season period will set any player up for how their year unfolds. We're hopeful as leaders, and I'm hopeful as captain, that as many players as we can get really buy into their off-season programs, take the time to mentally and physically rejuvenate, and come back mid-November and get stuck into a big pre-season.
You've said that players need to work on their skills individually, on their own time. I think you said on ABC Radio. Do you expect the group to go and focus on that in their own time in their holidays?
Yeah, I think anyone should be focusing on their craft. I mean, it's not like we're part-time footballers. We're professionally paid footballers, and anyone who has the opportunity to improve in some areas should be taking advantage of that. And off-season is a period where I'll go away and work on my skills, and I would hope that all of our players on our list will be looking at ways to improve themselves as well.
And what do you make of the messaging from Dale that the club needs to become a powerhouse? How does that what kind of mind frame does that put you in, and is it a positive message coming out of
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm really aligned with Dale and the board and their vision for our footy club. I think it's optimistic, it's positive, it's everything it needs to be. And as players and as captain, we'll do everything we can to get in behind that vision.
When you look at the list, what gives you optimism that things will continue to grow? What excites you?
I think our spine's in great shape, and the age demographic is in the slot. If you look at Hogan, Tabernar, Lobb, Alex Pearce, Joel Hamling, Sean Darcy as our ruck, that is a really solid 6 or 7 players, and they set up the skeleton of our team. If we can keep those players fit and available on the field for 20 games next year, we should be a pretty good footy side.
A few picks on the weekend, only a small sample size obviously, but a lot of positivity from what he showed. Would you like to see him one that would be backed in early next year and given a bit of a run at it?
Yeah, Hugh will determine what sort of career he'll have. He's got all the attributes and talent in the world, but he needs to get his off-field right and his off-season right this coming off-season. Who knows what sort of player Hugh could really be if he applies himself over the break and comes back and hits the ground running.
Final start next week. Do you have a preference for Premier?
Preference for Premier? I wouldn't mind seeing Brisbane do well, given my old mate Lockie Neals in amongst that side, or the Giants. I have a soft spot for them with Matty De Boer playing with them.
It's so rare for a club to get rid of the coach and the CEO at the same time. What's it been like for you as captain, trying to, keep the play group together and really pass on messages and things like that?
Yeah, we just sort of control our areas. I sort of work with the players and get them to focus on what they can control, which was preparing for the game on the weekend. It was a tough ask. Everyone was, I know I was fairly mentally fried going into the game. It's a weird time to be a player when these things happen, but it's part of the industry.
Have you had much contact with Ross the past week?
A couple of messages back and forth, but he was pretty keen for the season to finish and me to focus on the final game before we properly catch up. But in due course, we'll spend some time together.
Would you endorse him for another senior coaching gig if there's one?
I would. Yeah, I don't think that's the last we've seen of Ross Lyon.
As for yourself, you had a fantastic year, absolute professional on and off the field. How do you instill that, rephrase this, what have you learnt most from this season in what has been a frustrating year, and you're probably, again, at your peak? How do you think you'll improve to next year?
Yeah, thanks. I really set out this year to play all year, and that's the biggest attribute I can bring to this footy club, is being on field as much as I can, and that will be my focus going into next year is trying to play as many games as I can, 22 and finals ideally, and I'll try and instill as much of that as I can in the rest of the playing group.
Were you surprised when there was a fallout on Tuesday last week with the coach and the CEO that there was talk about a toxic culture of the club? Did that come as a surprise?
That's not a surprise. Anytime you have a senior position adjustment at a club, there's going to be talk about culture.
Just like one last one, upset to see the end of AFLX?
Well, I've gone on and had a pretty good year, so and I wouldn't mind playing with Marcus Bontempelli again. So they have their reasons.
Any chance that'll be in purple?
The
Marcus.
no, mate. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the year. Appreciate it.